but what you probably don't know is that she is a dogged researcher. And when she gets a hold of a question about this kind of work, she does not let up until she comes up with some answers. And today, I think this is going to be really interesting. We're going to hear some of your most recent thoughts about kilns. So without further ado, Cherylene.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. Let's see if this microphone works. We're up by Dove Creek, and we had an awful lot of that smoke in the house last night, coming off that prescribed burn up there. So all night I've been clearing my throat. So if you guys, everybody good or a little louder? Yeah. And I'm a wanderer, so it's kind of hard to be disciplined to this microphone. But my presentation today, it's kind of funny how you decide to do this, because I never intended to talk here. I've always got about 3 or 4 research things going on in my head. And but it's always hard to bring it together and bring it to the table, at least in a manner that proves that you're actually doing something that's worthy for somebody else to know about. But, and so as I got the phone call, I just took this deep dive into kilns. And now, mind you, a sideway on this first is that Paul was talking about a lot of stuff that leads right into my talk. And this makes me uncomfortable. And yeah, will it come out? Oh, perfect. Oh, there we go. All about it, right? Okay, because I'm a walker too, I guess, a little bit. But a lot of the information, it ran right into the work that I'm doing on the kilns themselves. Now, mind you, my first kiln conference, I think, was in 2011. And I come out of eastern Colorado on the plains, big flat land country that's initially worked on the Upper Republican and the woodland pottery, great big 5-gallon jars with pointed bottoms. But my husband and I were hiking down in this country a ton at that time, and really just fascinated by everything, of course, but never intended to replicate pottery. Picked up Clint Swink's book and just like, hey, let's pull this off. Now, I'm one of these trial and error and never communicate with another human being, because I don't want to make the same mistakes somebody else did, and that may not be the best way to do research, but it makes sense to me because I know I work my way through it. So as I'm coming to the kiln conferences, and all the old school people that know everything are coming up to me and saying, hey, have you read the Brisbane report? Have you read the Waterline? Have you read Fuller's? Do you know about Woods Mesa? I tell you what, that literature is tougher to get your hands on than you think, especially when you're in eastern Colorado and the libraries out there didn't access it. So I really didn't know the background literature on a lot of these kilns, but Bill and I were covering country. Obviously, we were seeing them in the back country, but it wasn't until I've always been friends with Owen Severance. I don't anybody in here know Owen Severance from over by Blanding? I mean, Owen is this live off the grid, walk thousands of miles and write papers and stuff, just a guy that kind of came into the Four Corners area a very long time ago, like an electrical engineer or something, but a brilliant mind that just pretty says to himself. Well, I moved down here a year and a half ago, and he and I became very close, and he just started dumping this research material on my kitchen table that I had never seen before. So the combination of that, and he's documented close to 900 kilns. And so Bill and I are falling behind on his footsteps now. We're GPSing as many of the kilns as we can, taking measurements, that kind of stuff. So, but Owen, you'll see him pop up a lot in this, because without him, I don't think that I could have moved into this next phase, because I'm all about 100% authentic. So I want to do what they did. In the meantime, I want to make gorgeous pottery, but mostly I want to do what they did. And I'm the one that's sitting in a ruin out there thinking, now, where are they getting their water from? You know, so I use my own urine in the clay. I've painted my blood on pots, all this kind of weird stuff. So I want to be authentic. I want to be in their head. But it wasn't until Owen started dishing the kilns at me, I'm like, we're missing something. We're definitely missing something. So anyway, that's where this presentation, I didn't even plan on that introduction, but you guys kind of need to know my background. So I'm way later than all the cool stuff that was going on down here. Wished I could have been here. So anyhow, let's talk about kilns, right? Because we don't go out there and study what they did. How do we know that we're doing, I mean, if you can make a beautiful pot, great, but how do we know we're doing what they did? So mine is going to tie in a fair amount to yours, but these were just, I'm not even going to talk about these. These were to get you guys to thinking like a prehistoric potter, because a lot of my stuff is going to lead into this. So it's just some crazy stuff that we always think we know. So let's go for it here. Let's see if this works. Anyway, so the big point in here is that last little paragraph where it says, it's just because we go out there and we look at a kiln, we cannot make these assumptions, right? We cannot be certain that that outcome from that particular kiln was a success or even a successful firing. What did it look like to them? We don't know who was working there. Were they trying new minerals? Was there a group together? Those family units coming together? When you go out and you look at 100 kilns, you just think, I'm going to do it just like them. But when you find these kilns aren't matching up, not all of these kilns were successful firings. So this is the big, you must be careful not to assume that every kiln you observe or dissect produced the ideal firing. These are just my sightings. These are some of the people even that Paul was mentioning, running down through there. A lot of the Fullers and the Brisbanes, they're all on there. The Blinmans, the Shepherds, the Swinks, they're all on there. There's Owen, Tori, and Bill. Bill is my husband. The man cuts every bit of firewood, strips juniper, does everything, walks beside me, documents kiln. I could not do this without Bill, and he knows it. Tori's my best friend ever down in Arizona doing very similar to I am, but she didn't get to make it this time. And Owen is the guy with the snake stick that knows where 900 kilns are. Okay, so what I did when I first started this, there's like 100 pages of notes trying to bring all this information from all these publications together, and it's just way too much. So I narrowed it down, I think, to my top 9, and a lot of these have been discussed before, but we just want to, because not all of you guys here are trench kiln firing people that understand oxidation reduction, limited oxidation. So some of this will be good for some of you guys, because it'll get up to speed when you watch the kilns tomorrow. But there are also some questions, so let's just play through it here a little bit. So there's always been this, Owen is one of them that says no smother dirt. He always wants us to pile on juniper ash or something else to stop that reoxidation of our black and whites. But other people say no, 100% they smothered. So let's go down. This is such a weird angle for me. I feel like I need to be sitting with you guys. All right, you're good. You're good. This will be better. So anyway, what are the benefits to smothering? Why would you even smother one of these big trench kilns? And basically to lock in the atmosphere, right? You get those pots nice and black and white, and if you guys understand oxidation reduction, you get them black and white, and if you just let them cool with abundant oxygen, you may end up with red on orange. So we're trying to stop the reoxidation of the iron. So that's one of the reasons to smother. Another one is, he mentioned when they pulled those pots out and they all up and cracked, it's definitely to slow that cooling phase down a little bit. And the third one is simply to protect yourself from weather change. Those are my 3 main reasons I would smother. But can you skip it? Well, of course you can. Get an iron-free slip that's not going to go warm on you. Throw some mineral paint that maybe has some trace lead and copper in it. I fired black and white on the surface with all the oxygen it wants. But you still will get a little bit of warm tone, even in a fairly iron-free slip. The other thing is that if you can get that slip to vitrify, man, let it lock in either that organic paint or that iron, whatever, your mineral paint. So those are both possibles, but, and I put that line on there, what does smothering dirt look like? And you're gonna see as that ties in here in a minute, because when I'm out looking at kilns, I'm looking at ash stain. Is it inside the kiln, is it outside the kiln? And I'm thinking about what I'm doing and how many kilns I've fired. My smothered dirt, I use it over and over. Sometimes it gets so bloomin' black and gray and ashy stained, and we throw it out of the kiln, we throw it out where it doesn't affect my wind flow. I like a lot of wind when I fire pottery. And sometimes I'll even put it on the opposite side of the kiln just for the sake of bumping heat back into my kiln. But what blows me away, these people that are so anti-smother, and even though this is supposed to be a non-opinionated talk, I definitely have my opinions, and I don't understand the amount of dirt work that these people moved, and I mean now we're talking about berms and swells. Winston's looking at Winston Hurst over in Blanding's looking at the LIDAR stuff, and these people are moving dirt. The fact, or building a pit house or a kiva or whatever. So why is it so far-fetched to think they actually could smother the kiln, right? So again, I'm not going to make a bunch of big conclusives. I'm trying to get your brains to work, and maybe one of you will come up to me later and say something. And I'll say, well, I never thought of it that way. So there was a great study that was done. I think this is in the gray literature, but it was over on Alkali Ridge in the 80s. Somebody throw their names out there, but I can't think of them right now. I think it's Heacock and somebody, but anyway, we'll get back to them. They'll pop back up again. But they end up doing, it's a vandalism study, so they pull 10 40-acre sites and do a survey to see what's going on, recording every archaeological feature that are in those 10 40-acre sites. And they didn't do any excavation, but they definitely are looking at these kilns. And the most common feature they're recording are kilns. It's probably the most common feature in the Southwest, archaeological feature is a kiln, because there's so many of them out there, right? So they recorded 35 sites that got site numbers, but there was actually more than one kiln in some of those. So they actually had 47 kilns total. And they did a really good report on it, a good read, but they only reported the ash stain on 25 of those. So I just started working the numbers. So if I'm only seeing an ash stain inside my trench kiln, that could mean that that kiln had never been smothered. It could mean that it was excavated. I think this is a swing thing with a plunge and pull. Or it could be some of these together, or the ash, that charcoal darkened smothered dirt was actually put back in on top of that kiln for storage. And if you hang with me to the end on the storage is a big deal. How are we going to my terminology is to put the kiln to bed. So if you only see ash stain, 12% of them are only on the outside, which the funny thing is when you look at most of the kilns out there, you're just like, the erosion has done so much stuff too without, putting a shovel into them. If I'm only seeing soil, native soil in the kiln itself, I may have just had some erosion come in on it. But also, it may be that some other soil had been removed and deposited beside the kiln when opening or cleaning it. So maybe that's why I'm not seeing, I'm only seeing the stain on the outside. Both in and out is probably the most common, and the smothered dirt was probably deposited on the outside. It's dirty just like mine is at home, and the kiln was possibly used more than once. There's more evidence of that. And again, there's that put to bed. That kiln was not put to bed properly. And that's why I threw that question up to you guys early on for you that replicate out there with these trench kilns, is because, when you do a firing, are you really disciplined and you go out there and you take care of your charcoal and your furniture and everything like that because you don't want it full of snow this winter or something? Or you just walk away? I mean, I did the thing where I've had a really bad firing and blew up a bunch of pots, and literally the pots got through in the shed and I went in the house for 2 months. So I mean, sometimes we don't put our kilns away properly, depending on how valuable. I tell you what, you're a lot more motivated to put your kiln away properly if you've had a good firing, because you want to do it again next time. The no stain at all, who knows? Maybe that kiln was never opened after the firing. Maybe those pots are still in there, probably not. But it could have erosion, had deposited earth, or maybe it was a fully oxidizing firing. The thing that's interesting, for the most part, there's not that many sherds around these kilns. And questions in the middle? Yeah, real quick.
So when you say ash stain on the dirt, is that just basically dirty dirt with?
Yeah. He's way ahead of me. I don't know how good you guys can see this back here, but here's definitely some examples. So here's Bill squatted by a beautiful kiln on a bench. This is off one side of Mustang Mesa over there by Blanding, and you'll notice the ash stain is only within the interior of the slab walls, right? I don't see any ash stain around this kiln at all. This one's also only in the interior. There's Owen's snake stick. So whenever you see the snake stick, Owen always puts his major stick down, and again, he graciously let me use these photos. I don't even think Owen's here, but he should be. But this one's only on the interior. Look at this kiln here. The kiln's sitting way up here by itself. Look at all this debris and stain coming down this hill, right? So I don't know about you guys, but when you fire, usually we fracture a lot of sandstone, and we also have our kiln furniture. But you usually throw that stuff out downhill, clean the kiln, throw the ash back out, fire again. So Owen, and I agree with him, that the more of this broken, fire-reddened sandstone we see, specifically downhill usually, this is usually evidence of multiple firings. They just kept working that kiln and cleaning it. But then this little square guy down here, I don't have any stain inside or out, right? So that you can tell, look at this fire-reddened rock. This is still a 3x3 kiln. Very vertical walls on it, but no stain at all. That doesn't mean any of the things that I'm guessing that, was that a redware kiln? I don't know. But it does mean I probably got soil deposited, erosion soils. So did that answer your question back there? So one of the few evidences of smothering that we actually have is speckles. And it's so funny, I came up with this, I'm like, oh yeah, speckles. And somebody says, well, you know, Clint has freckles. And I'm like, yeah, dang it. Him and I, we run parallel paths for sure. But I'm gonna scoot back over here again. Am I blocking? You guys can see okay? Okay, so there is a difference. So you see the little bitty dots, right, all over? So when your smother dirt goes on and makes contact with a hot pot that's probably not got a cover shield protecting the entire vessel, we'll talk about that. The little bits of organic that are in your smother dirt will make contact and put, this is basically a miniature fire cloud, right, smoke cloud. So this is evidence of smothering. Can I see that prehistorically on pots? Bowls are usually fired upside down. I mean, that's really good evidence that pot was smothered, is that speckling. It also can tie into cover shields. We'll go there in just a minute. But what about smoke clouds? And I was gonna bring a pot with a big smoke cloud on it, but you all know what they look like. But initially I thought, yeah, you throw your smother dirt on and it locks some volatile compounds in there against my pot. And then I throw the smother dirt on and man, it just clouds up on there and it stays put. But it's not true. I get smoke clouds on my surface firings. You just have to get a piece of organic material trapped down between two pots. And a little bit of ash cover, you can get a good smoke cloud on the surface. So really smoke clouds are not evidence of what do you call it, smothering pots. But speckles or freckles definitely are. So again, only if you didn't have the cover shield. So let's see if we can move into some of this. So here are these quotes when I'm talking about all this information, and we're not gonna read all of these. By the way, real quick, 37 I have that I've come up with. I didn't know if Paul said a number on this, but 37 excavated kilns, actually excavated. Again, Owen's saying 900 that he's recorded. Obviously, there's way more out there. I mean, on that Alkali Ridge study, and that may be coming up yet, but you know, they're finding 42 or 47 in those randomly 10, 40 acre plots. They calculated there to be 1,507 kilns on Alkali Ridge by what they were already seeing in the areas they worked. So kilns are, if you know where to look, kilns are everywhere. But 37 actually excavated, so we'll get into them a little bit more. Oh, but this is fascinating, right? All but one have charcoal in the lower stratum. That's interesting, we'll come back to that. But just some of them to pick up on, you know, on the smother dirt. Large ash deposit between two kilns. Another one, beside a kiln is ashy soil. Right? If you're going to use that smother dirt more than once, and you're always going to get some charcoal and ash mixed in it, if you have set that smother dirt out, you're going to get some sign of that stain on the surface between kilns or around kilns. But I don't want to ignore the fact that maybe they weren't smothering. So, I mean, Honeycutt and Fetterman are out there on Alkali Ridge, and they're finding these mounds of dirt around these kilns, and they're saying, but there's no evidence of charcoal or ash or nothing in these mounds. And they actually go on to say that the absence of the mounds containing charcoal and ash, you know, indicates that the features were used only once. That's another debate too. But it has to do with the smother soil too. So I just wanted to make, you know, Blindwin says, no, they were used repeatedly. And I guess that doesn't tie as much into the smother soil, but the fact that we're looking at these mounds of dirt and seeing the colors that are in them and wondering, you know, was this a smother dirt or was it just an excavation dirt? But here's one of my favorite one from Alvin Hayes up on Weatherill, and I think this is early. This is like in the 60s or 70s, maybe 70s, Weatherill Mesa, 60s. And he says the fact that charcoal rather than ash is found in these pits indicates that the fires in them were smothered while still burning. So that's just a straight out there, because, I mean, when I do an oxidation firing, I definitely will have bits of charcoal left, a surface firing, but mostly just a stain. So the fact that we got charcoal in the bottom of these kilns probably says they were smothered. They have to be smothered with dirt? No, they don't. That was one of your first questions. Whoops, look at her go by. This is next one. This is completely, now we're walking away from smother soil and we're talking about just an oddity that I kept seeing pop up in the papers. And for me, I'm always trying to replicate the original process, and I'm wondering what tools they're using in the firing process. So something to manipulate hot charcoal, sandstone wood. There's a kiln over by Blanding that has this ginormous, almost rolling pin shaped rock sitting right in beside it. And I'm always like thinking, God, I could just reach in there with that little rolling pin. I could, push my furniture around or something. Parts of bowls, I do weird things like this. So this is my shovel. This is just a split of juniper that carbonized on the end. So I can manipulate stuff in the kiln in an authentic manner. I don't want to rely on modern stuff because you can't be authentic if you're not authentic. You can cheat as much as you want, but once you figure it out, you gotta try on authentic at least once. So there's these kinds of things in there, but the funny thing was, look at all the dipper handles that are showing up out here on Woods Mesa. Now, mind you, dippers are one of the toughest things to fire because that joint where the handle meets the bowl is probably the most vulnerable, right, in the firing process. And so a lot of them break off. But think about handles. Hi, I saw Leander. Sorry. What do you think? Handles are hollow most of the time. They're almost fireproof for a minute. If I have to get in there and manipulate something, I will. If I had a ladle and I dipped up hot charcoal to put over here on top of a pot that was getting oxidized, and then when we went home tonight, and I broke the handle off, I'm going to take that little bowl part back because I can still use that. But I'm going to leave these dang handles at that kiln because they're basically tools now, tools for firing. Now, granted, they could be using them for half a dozen other things, but they're one of the few things that they have that would have been insulated to make contact. So now, I came up with this theory after I started seeing these facts. 6 dipper, 5, 1 pound, 2, 1. Why? Yeah. If they're valuable somewhere else, why didn't they go somewhere else? I don't know. It might not be a fact. Just me thinking. The next one, jump from this. And one more, something new in the kiln world. Okay, fuel or not fuel. This is just giving you an idea, because you always wonder, are we firing with the right stuff? It's still, in all the literature, it's predominantly juniper and pinyon, more juniper than pinyon. But some, again, these are out of these excavation notes. These are not my information, but pine seeds, pine cone scales, fragments from the bean family, corn kernels, cob fragments, burnt sugar starch. One thing about it, when they ran into this burnt sugar starch, the volume was so small that it probably wasn't representing food production. Even I think it does up Brisbane's got the calcine boned in some of those kilns up there. And again, such a small amount. And they think that bone was cooked and pulverized before it was ever, they even played around with that at that firing at the PIII conference, trying to see if that bone would actually create reducing environment. But it would have had to have been such a huge volume. And they never nailed exactly, couldn't conclusively say where that calcine bone came from. I think there was some talk of it being in the bird or, turkey family, and corn pollen, So these things are showing up in kilns, again, in published literature, but Honeycutt and Fetterman go on to say that extremely high corn pollen content may be that they're using corn stalks as a secondary fuel in some cases. So corn stalks are kind of like tumbleweed and juniper bark. It's a good way to bring some temperature back up, and I actually think Shepard says that down below here. Increase the temperature of the bonfire after it had begun to drop. So I was going to do a corn cob firing here, but it's getting more and more difficult to get corn cobs because most of the combines grind them up and spit them back out on the grounds for mulch. So it's tougher to get corn cobs now. The other thing, again, these are just fuel notes. It's just to get you thinking. This is just stuff that I saw in the literature that caught my attention. These are pretty the minor ones. So we're through 3 of them. Let's see what else we got. Yes, go ahead.
Regarding corn cobs, if the kilns were typically built away from the village, does that mean
30 feet to 3 miles.
So did they find corn cobs closer to the villages, or would they carry them off 3 miles? That doesn't make sense to me that they would.
Restate your question real quick.
With the corn, if they used corn cobs
For the firing.
Mm-hmm. How far would they carry those?
It's a good question. Yeah, who knows, right? They've got the baskets and stuff. I don't know. Or were the kilns associated with the field houses that were associated with the fields?
Yeah.
I think it's Hayes says up on Wetherill Mesa, he makes a comment in there that this kiln is right below a field, in the vicinity of a check dam. So that's a good question, right? I talked to Owen about corn cobs about a year ago a little bit because he says, one thing they don't really show up that much in midden piles. I mean, if you go hiking in the backcountry, you'll definitely still find them in the granaries and, you know, in amongst maybe ruins, you'll come into them, or in alcoves and stuff, but you don't see them in the middens per se that much. So it doesn't mean they weren't burning them in a hearth, you know, for heating purposes, but it's a little bit of a waste product. I think a little bit more so than even the juniper bark would be. I think there'd be more uses for it. And again, not an archaeologist, just a replicator here, but yeah, I think they could have transported corn cobs, but that'd be another idea, because we're coming to proximity here in a minute, proximity of where these kilns are associated with. And so when we get to that, are they proximity to fields? You know, I don't know. Yeah, but I'm not sold. I think it'd be difficult to do either organic or mineral. I think it'd be difficult to use corn cobs to fire the trench kiln. I'm not opposed to using it to bounce the heat back up at the end. But when I was going to do a kiln, burn a kiln here, it was going to be a surface oxidation firing. So I was just going to load in some charcoal, put me some pots in on there, and literally just bury them in corn cobs and let them go and see what happened. But so at some point, yeah, picked up a bunch a few years ago out on eastern Colorado, but never made it to the kiln with them. But yes, transport, I think, of cobs is not unheard of anyway. Cover sherds. Everybody wants to talk cover sherds, cover shields. I was going to change this. I like to think of these as shields. I like to think of the stuff I find in the wild as sherds. But this is a real recent firing I did. You see all these test bowls of minerals sitting around. This is just like everything but the kitchen sink. There's Andes mineral poked in there. I've been working on something this summer with mineral, and you know, you get a better firing when you do a full kiln of pottery. I feel like they help each other, they cook each other together. Combined heat energy and holding it in the kiln. But something, I'm going to have to put my microphone down here for. A long time ago, I had a redware pot. I did a redware firing that I over-reduced, and the most beautiful red I got was under one of the cover shields. I guess, what the heck, does that make sense? Well, I did a firing, and I don't have a picture of it on here, but this pot's here. You can look at it later, and I can't hold the microphone and do all the dancing at the same time. I fired this pot this spring in a reducing atmosphere. This is a fairly iron-laden clay, right? So it was fairly red when it went in the kiln. You notice the big red splotch on it? Guess what's set there? The cover shield. The cover shield is blocking the reducing gases. And so I've had it happen before. So what happens when we're trying to reduce mineral? Because we're a bunch of weirdos, we like our pottery. We want our pottery to turn out and take it home. We don't want it to crack. We don't want it to be ugly and gray. And so we cover everything profusely with cover shields because it makes us feel better about building a huge fire on all our work, right? So, but what happens if you want to fire mineral paint and you're covering everything with cover shields? Right? You're not going to get the reducing. Now, I have since learned that it's direct contact. It's direct contact because when I would do my test vessels, they would look like just little pillars, and then I would throw a cover shield on top, and it would look kind of like a mushroom, and all that mineral would turn out. But the mineral that had contact with the cover shields, I wasn't getting the reducing gases. So this is what's fun about this game, is that every time you do something, there's something there and you're not sure what it means, but you put it in your back pocket and years later it pops back up. So this is a very recent firing, and you're welcome to look at this in a little bit. But this is a very recent firing, and if you'll notice, compared to some of our last kiln conference, so ignore the fact that every pot that ever existed, because some of these are refires, and you know, again, I'm just trying to fill a kiln up at this point. But look at how few. All I'm doing with these cover shields is I'm protecting hallways, air hallways. I've got to get that air in that kiln if I'm going to cook. And occasionally you'll have the beautiful handle with the funny little effigy or something. Less is more. And the reason you're seeing so much right here, cover shield, is I've got a cone set in there. You know, the Orton cones that bend with temperature. So I can tell, because that's a, you know, I know we can put the probes in and we can shoot the little lasers just like I'm doing with this thing. But absorbed heat seems to give me more realistic figures on where I'm getting to. This particular kiln, I think, hit right at 850, and I was just a little over 900, or it's vice versa. I don't know which end of the kiln's here, but so I was making my temperature. I like to bump 900 C as much as I can. But look at the amount of cover shields. Matter of fact, I have fired multiple times without them now. And so this might just be a handicap. But I'm also saying, because when you start to looking at the pros and cons, right? They do all the things we already talked about. You're not gonna get a fire shock when that piece of hot wood comes down in. That secondary fuel comes down in and you're smothered dirt and there's a lot of weight on your pots. But the cons is the reducing gases can't get to the, especially to the mineral. But that's why you guys get a lot of gray whites, is you're over cover shielding. Yeah, you're trying too hard to protect everything. And then they do insulate it from the secondary heat. So there's this funny pros and cons here are the things like, yay, you know, it can manipulate and direct the airflow versus it can restrict the airflow. Yeah. So there's some of those ones you just have to weigh with each individual setting. Or the other one is to protect it from airborne kiln pollutants, which is basically your soot. Your soot likes to stick on your white surfaces, and then you got to clean it off. Versus if you put a cover shield over it, you might prohibit what you had going on down there. You might prohibit soot accumulation, and you don't have to clean it as much.
But you need that oxygen to clean it off, and that means the cover
Right.
shirt is restricting that.
Right. So this is what's funny. So cover sherds is all individual, and I think that's why when we even look in the excavations, we're not seeing a yes or no. Some people are using them, some aren't. Some are using a whole bunch, some aren't. Anyway, that's a Shepherd quote. I'm sure you all have already read it there. Thank goodness for Shepherd, Anna Shepherd. But here's some of those quotes again, and I'm not going to read them out, but some of these kilns, one kiln, almost a 3.5 foot by 8.5 foot kiln, had 5.2 pounds of small sherds and sherd spalls, but notice I put plus, fragments of 11 vessels. Thank you, Fuller, for separating that. Anytime he could actually say that this was a vessel itself, he separated it from these other sherds that were in the kilns. So we can see 25 separate vessels, including 2 whole mugs, but that is not the same as 9.3 pounds of these oddballs that are in there. A little bit bigger kiln, but now we got 28.6 pounds in addition to 40 fragments of approximately 15 complete vessels. So this is a 3.5 foot kiln. This is about size, not that much different. The kiln out there is not quite that big, but anyway, there does Fuller's saying there does seem to be some evidence for cover sherds in the form of wasters. I think Paul even threw that out there. But Shepherd throws it together, there at the end. The placement of large sherds around vessels being fired is a means of protection against undesired discolorization, there we go, the soot accumulation in an oxidizing atmosphere. Although she further states that the protective layer is unnecessary when the vessels are to be well oxidized at the completion of the firing. So again, I'm just trying to throw the evidence that I'm seeing at you. So far I'm saying smother dirt. I'm leaning a little bit, on it, but if you can figure out another way to smother, I'm not gonna back out from smothering. I've cracked enough pots without it. But it doesn't mean that it was dirt. The other big one is these cover shields. So it's your call. You've got to find your thing. But Bill and I did a firing last fall, and we had this one little wonky mug that had been from a clay that wanted to spall terribly, and it didn't make it into the first firing with the clay, but then when that bowl came through a couple years ago, and now it still just sits on the table. It's a beautiful bowl, but it just spits off chunks of calcium spalls all the time. So I didn't care about the mug. So we literally set that mug dead center in the kiln up on a rock. It didn't have a single cover shield on it. Cannonball white, set up there. We called him the Tell. We could see him the entire firing. He was just taking a beating in there. Oh my God, he's the most beautiful, and he's never spalled. So I think I got into just the borderline, some of the vitrification stuff on it. No cover shields, nothing. He's just rocking it up there all by himself. So maybe we're a little dependent on cover shields. I think they used them if they had them in special occasions. So, all right, so here's a topic I really enjoy. Kiln's proximity to what? To fields, to corn cobs, to quality clay. Will they carry the clay back that 3 miles? Will they carry the greenware back from habitation back to the kiln? Are they going to carry the fuel? How much fuel? We know they were carrying fuel down to Chaco Canyon, those huge trees that were 30 foot long. We can carry wood. We're not against carrying wood. Most fun is carrying fired pottery back. Yeah. So I've always felt like, and this is just an intuition, I'm out there as a replicator, I think kilns are associated with quality clays. I think in the spring, the women got to get out of the house and they head out to some field houses in proximity to good clays that are usually, oddly enough, I think Mr. Bradley is here. Did you say one of these, Bruce? I think you somewhere like this, that there was a lot on the north side of Woods Mesa out here. The proximity of clays and water sources is, it's really weird to have somebody in the room. Let me tell you what you thought. No, sorry. Let me tell you what you thought, actually. No, that it's not, this is what's fascinating, because when you get out there and you start looking at kilns and you're like, okay, and we're going to go into this in just a minute, but how close they are to the rims, and they love this colluvial soil, and they love their rocks and everything else, and they love their drainages, and then all of a sudden you walk 5 more feet and you're like, oh, I'm right on the rim of the canyon, and here's a beautiful, like a modern day road cut of this beautiful clay going down, and oh, and there's a little seepage right there, and so yeah. Then again, if you're carrying your water in your bladder, you don't really care where the seepage is. But so, again, with Owen, I'm out. There is a kiln sitting right here. Now, mind you all think you're gonna walk out and see the kiln that you see, big slabs sticking up. Sometimes you see that. Sometimes you just see this stain with these. It's in a rectangular. It's got some of the spalled, fire-ridden. Look for fire-ridden sandstone. And then there's another kiln sitting right back here in the shade. And when Owen and I came in here about 1.5 years ago, he said, don't you want to collect this clay? And I thought, that looks like the worst clay I've ever seen in my life. But because Owen brought me here, I'll be nice. And I did collect them. I started collecting this green color one. This is in the Dakota Formation, so I'm above it. There's also Morrison clay in the same drainage, very available to these kilns. But here we got Dakota Formation. It's got something else going on because it's throwing this green color instead of this traditional carbonized gray. There's also gray clay sitting right here by the side of it. I tested them both. I take testing. You guys have all heard me talk before. A lot of you have. But anyway, I run it through a bunch of different testing. Oxidizing, reduction, shrinkage. I take it through a bunch of different things. The gray clay fires white. Definitely could be a slip clay. This is probably the #1 rock star clay I've ever collected in my life. I can pinch the walls down to nothing. It vitrifies, or begins incipient vitrification so much earlier than a lot. And I had probably collected 150 clays just in this area, not on the plains, over the last 10 years, and run them through that. And I don't think I even have a piece of this right now, but I was like, what is this magic? These pots don't weigh anything. And when I did an organic firing this spring and got way too much oxygen in my kiln. My kiln down here fires about 50 degrees Celsius higher than my one on the plains, a lot more rock in the ground. But I got too much oxygen. I got a lot of warm tones on my black and whites, which is fine, they're beautiful. But this little dude that was made out of this clay, he just held black and white. His interior is dark gray. And it's fascinating because he was already locked out. You couldn't get oxygen back into him. So there's that almost sintering or starting to get a little liquid. So, but right here, so Bill and I went back this area and walked the heck out of this area. And we're in the Alkali Ridge area on this. I don't know how many kilns we ended up documenting. They're everywhere in this drainage. And just right up in behind these trees here is this lovely rock structures that are definitely field houses. And there's just kilns all over around them. And I'm like, yeah, these guys are coming out here from 10 acre or 5 acre. They're camping in. They're making their pots. This is a week-long process. In a week, whoever, the men, the extras, haul in the timber. They fire here. Bill and I can build a kiln in no time and a drainage out here. So I think they're going to the clay. But do we know that for a fact? Hibbett says that potters went to the raw material, performed their tasks there rather than collecting it and taking it home. Yes, he knew the value of how heavy a bucket of clay is. And this is actually, I think this is Bruce's, but I think it came out of Fuller's publication where both springs and clay deposits are associated. In areas where field houses or summer habitation sites are located, 1 or more kilns usually can be found in the nearest drainage. Severance in Cottonwood, South Cottonwood Wash over in Utah. So even he's seeing the association, Owen is, with the 900 kilns he's documented. So that brings me in, yeah, go ahead.
That strikes me is, and this may or may not be crucial, but no metates. What are they crushing igneous temper on? Are they bringing that stuff out?
Good point. It's excellent thought.
That's the one thing that you don't
If you
see.
could, I know, and that's frustrating because if we could get more association of the field houses with these kiln sites. I mean, how many field houses out there have been excavated around where these kilns are? Are there any kind of pottery tools left there? Smoothing stones, you know? We did, I don't know where Bill is, he'll bounce my memory, but I do think we didn't have the actual metate, but I think we had 2 or 3 grinders. Yes, I know we did. I could take you back there, exactly, that were in that area. Yeah.
So,
Same question, these guys are twins. Go ahead.
so you talk about the field houses and the clay and making pots there and firing the pots, but when are they painting them? Because it seems, yeah.
What was your statement?
And if they don't have the metates, like you see a lot of us really intricate black and white.
So what we do with making pottery is we set in controlled atmospheres in our little studios. We can take all day and we can put plastic over our pots and come back and finish it. We take 4 days to burnish a pot. I mean, first off, these people lived outdoors 24/7, right? Pretty much, yeah. Number one, we don't know for a fact there's not metates there because there hasn't been enough field houses excavated. You look at that crazy lady back there, Kelly. She probably made that 5-gallon Hoya that's sitting downstairs. She probably made that sitting outside. So I mean, you get together at the primitive conferences, and these people they sit outside all the time. They make pots and they paint pots, and they do it all outside. So you'll find niches and cool areas. Bill and I we were out on Fuller's Site 9 on that Alkali Ridge the other day, and there's a little overhang that they documented. And I said, they're setting their greenware in here. You know, it's right in amongst the kilns. And I'm like, what a great place to leave my pot and let it cool and dry on the north side in the shade. Of course, I see everything through a potter's eyes, but that's not unrealistic. As a matter of fact, for years, I've been trying to put together a group of about 6 or 8 women to go out and do this from beginning to end and see. Owen asked me once, how long does it take a mug and paint it? 3 hours. I can paint one. I can make one and paint one in 3 hours. But we get stuck in our modern world. You know, it's a little bit different. And all you're seeing when you look at museum collections are the best of the best. For everyone you see that's on display, there are 500 ugly ones downstairs that didn't make. They want to put the pristine out, right? So you're not seeing the quick paints. You know, it doesn't mean that every bowl that they're painting inside of a field house looks like the beautiful one that's for the logo for Crow County. So, I mean, different habitations, and occasionally the kilns are only just 30 feet from the ruin. So that's just it, right? We try to group everything in, and it can't happen in this, but I personally would prefer to go make them out there and sit in a field house instead. All you gotta do is dig a hole in the ground, put a little moisture in it, set your pot down in there and throw a sandstone slab over it, and it's the same as putting plastic wrap around it. So I mean, it won't get away from you, but we just haven't been, we're so used to studios, but it's a good question. It's a good question. The thing is, Donna, we won't know till we go out and do it. Come with me. Anyway, yeah. So we'll jump on now to kiln arrangement. So I think some of this sort of came up in Paul's talk too, and I'm trying to move fast. I always like to, at first I think, gosh, these people, and then I was like, God, I'll just keep talking. So there's a lot of stuff to think about. As long as you're not bored, I'll keep talking. Kilns show up in these weird dynamics, and I broke them into actually 5 groups of all. I've got the 2 bottom ones put together here, but clusters to me are whenever you get kilns where there's more than 3 together. And we'll see some evidence, the slides are coming, but Owen's biggest cluster off the corner of Alkali Ridge, 114 kilns. What is going on that we put 114 kilns in the same neighborhood? I can't tell you the exact acreage, but it isn't very big. I've seen the dots on the map. Fuller's got 5 kiln groups. He only excavates once, but he's got 5 kind of grouped out there together, out in Woods Mesa. In the Alkali Ridge study, I'm pretty sure, no, who is this? Let me read this real quick. Yeah, so when they scraped for that well pad, they had 4, these are the measurements on those kilns, lying kind of fairly grouped together. You know, are they working one and then are they moving into the other one? Did one give them bad results and they're not coming back? But we're seeing clusters, groups of kilns together. This is it. If you get out there and you start to find kilns in a spot, just keep looking. Just keep looking. There's always groups of kilns together. Sister kilns to me are kilns where I've got 2 kilns that are really associated with each other, but one of them could be rectangular and the other one circular. if you go up to my house right now, there's always multiple kilns, and I usually have fires going in at least 2 of them at the same time because I'm robbing stuff. You've seen me at the kiln conference where I'm going over and stealing out of other people's fires to get some hot charcoal. So sister kilns just means I got 2 kilns laying together. So we've got it happening on these features on Alkali Ridge. Heacock did those 2. Brisbane's got it up there on Mesa Verde. He's got 3 together. Another group of, these are nearly twin kilns. This kiln 1 and 2 up there at 3969. We got round kilns occasionally associated with rectangular. Drives Severance nuts because he associates round with basket maker and P1 and rectangular, subrectangular to later time periods. But I always have a round kiln beside a rectangular kiln. It supports my kiln. I can utilize that round kiln on the side, everything from warming to producing hot charcoal. So, and this was his most one that drove him nuts. An oval kiln that had been reused as a round, and then 6 foot away was a subrectangular. For him, that was 3 time periods, and maybe it is, I don't know. But they are associated with each. Twins are when you get 2 identical, and we'll show you that one, the big one right here in a minute. And then also when we divide kilns. I built a huge kiln. You're gonna see a photo of it a minute ago, in a minute coming forward. And then I ended up dividing it, and so I have different, it's like a 12-foot kiln, but I've actually got, because dividing, again, lets you work from one end to the other, right? You got your cold charcoal on one end, you got your hot, firing on the other side. So there's a lot of stuff going on with kilns. I find this stuff really interesting, and we're back to the vandalism study, again, consisting of 10 randomly chosen 40-acre tracts, 35, I actually threw this number at you guys already. Alkali Ridge is approximately 21 square miles, and by what they did up there, they estimated 1,500 kilns on 21 square miles. So of their numbers, I'm seeing 25% of them are in clusters, 8% of them have a sister. I didn't have any twin kilns out there. I had 6% that had been divided. And this conjoined deal is really interesting. The first time I went out with that one, there was a kiln that was 6 foot wide by 6 foot long. It's enormous, right in the bottom of a drainage. I'm like, there's no way they're gonna be able to set that secondary wood on that darn thing. And after I stood there and looked long enough, it had a single wall right down the center of it. It shared one wall. 2 kilns shared one wall. What dynamic is that serving, right? These are big kilns that are sharing. One of these on Alkali Ridge was a rectangular connected with a triangle, and then another one was 2 rectangles that only shared one corner. It may be, I don't like to get into the ceremonial and superstition and stuff, but if you had a good firing and then you had, I don't know, I'm not going there. Anyway, 49% of the kilns on Alkali Ridge had the option of using another fire feature nearby, and here's the example. So Bill and I are out hiking. There's a big, it's not a great house, but it's a nice site that sits up above here on this bench. And as we dropped in this rough drainage, so this photo is as I drop in the drainage, there's a kiln sitting right here, almost vertical, on a there's one sitting behind this tree, which comes out over here, and then we have one here, and we have one here. This is a cluster. I've got 4 kilns within steps of each other. So this is coming out of Brisbane's up at the water line, and he's got these 2 kilns that are 10 foot apart. And you'll notice, look at, I will get into it a little more, but look at the furniture over here on this one. I think my marker's going out, but the furniture supposedly on the bottom of that one, look at what's going on in this one. And you've got a separate fire feature staying up north, right? Something's going on there. They're interacting, right? Oh, I did put my educated opinion on here. F1 and F2 are revolving kilns. This kiln is put to bed. It's holding next time's charcoal. I robbed out of this kiln to get this guy put to bed. Okay? They just fired in this kiln. They took the pot. This is only my opinion. I'm, again, not an archaeologist. I think they fire in this kiln. I think they take their pots. They're chunking out that sandstone off to the side because they're not really worried if they use the same piece of furniture twice. They don't want to lose that charcoal. It's too valuable, right? So they take some of the stones that were in this one, because this was the last guy put to bed. By the way, he's got bedrock right here. Keep that in mind. But, and they slab cover that charcoal. So I'm getting way ahead of myself. But all I got to do now is push my smother soil in on top of those slabs. And when I come back in 6 months or next spring to fire, I just have to move a little dirt and lift up those big slabs, and right there's my charcoal bed ready to go, right? So this idea, and this was just something it just kept rolling around in my head, and obviously here's a clean out, or they're producing some of the charcoal on the side here, some other fire feature to support these 2 kilns. But I don't think if we don't understand how these kilns and these clusters are associated, we cannot understand the firing process. I really don't think we can. We got to see what's going on here. So here's some of those things, like, oh, my pointer's almost gone, but this kiln's been divided in half. Here you see the stick, the snake stick. We've got a round kiln, but they've got this area on the back of it here. I love this 2C shaped, where they hooked on, you know. Same one here. This is almost exactly the same as this one, where we've got a roundness, and then they've divided in the center. You guys know the U95, the Claudia kiln, Claudia Helm kiln. You can see the evolution of that kiln go through time. One kiln built, then it's divided, and adding on even more in the length. But if you look in the very last, the last thing that happens in that square big box on the end, there's a lot of juniper branches and stuff left in there. And I really feel like they are, not only are they using that as a warming box, but they're also producing charcoal to support the other end of the kiln. So even though it's a 28-foot kiln, it's actually serving 3 different functions. All right, so here we are at Umburo Point. Heacock got this in Kiva. By the way, you know, I cite all these guys, pray that they think what I'm doing is amazing. I didn't contact everybody for permission, so hopefully Kiva won't be coming to get me. But look at these 2 kilns, 8.2 meters, what, 28 feet? They're nearly identical. I would consider these twins, right? Now the sad thing is nobody ever recorded what was in the bottom of these kilns. They show us the slabs, and oddly enough, this one doesn't have, it has 2 left, has 2 less slabs left. This one had slabs on the bottom, the top one, feature 1. Yep, she's still working a little bit. Feature 2 had cobbles. Slabs are flat, cobbles are kind of round. Still can be sandstone. Wait, what? Why? What's the difference? I don't know. What is the difference? Have they robbed these walls to put this kiln to bed? To cover that charcoal and save it? They don't have a plastic tote. They're not taking it to the garden shed, right? But they want that charcoal, and I wish they would minus the value of these charcoal out of our figures for how much wood we're using to make a pot, because charcoal just keeps recycling itself. But anyway, that's my theory here. I actually think they put this kiln to bed. I don't know if they'll, but this feature 2 is nothing but ash and debris. So they've been using these 2 a while. Now we move on to stone. I love rock, because what does rock do? It makes a lot of heat. And if I can get 50 more degrees, you bet I'm going to. So I'm just run down through these, close to bedrock, decomposing sandstone, through gravelly soil, bedrock, sandstone, built into the rotted layer of cliff house, cut into bedrock, dug in. But I got to put these last ones in here. This one was dug into soil until it reached bedrock, but guess what? There's one that's just in the soil. You guys can't assign definites to anything. So, but most of them love their rock. And there's Owen standing by an amazing kiln where they utilized this beautiful Dakota sandstone. Boy, that thing must have cooked. I should have a better photo of it. But it's just, I mean, bright red, yeah, up against that sandstone. That heat's coming, I mean, the air's coming up, that airflow, it's bouncing into that rock feature there, pouring itself back into that kiln, producing amazing pottery. But let's wait and talk about this a second. But anyway, Owen's also obsessed with double-walled kilns. They show up in Lake Basketmaker, especially when in a cottonwood wash. I don't know if it's a technology or literally they broke a slab and Owen swears it's a technology. I haven't studied these hardly at all, these double-walled kilns. But in terms back to the Alkali Ridge, 8% of them were utilizing something like this, where they're utilizing something there. Now this little thing shows up in Hayes is up on Weathermill again in that early area, and he doesn't excavate it, but initially you're thinking, oh no, we got this great big, look how large this is. It's a rock, it's 4 foot tall by 13 foot long. It's split vertically, forming a V. The interior is 10 foot long, 2 to 4 foot deep, right? You guys are following me on it? You see what we're doing here? One is completely blocked in with sandstone, the other one's blocked in and has a little aperture, and initially you're just like, no, it's just a room. And then you get to reading on, and it says the inside 7 foot was covered, no, let's jump back a bit, I missed it, right? Okay, no, the inside 7 foot was covered with a large slabs of rock. The interior was fire reddened. Now mind you, you just go out and have a regular old campfire. You're not gonna do this that's up on top there by Owen. Fire reddened, and of course it has almost a half a foot of charcoal in the bottom. Can this be a kiln? I don't know. Corrugated jars, I'm just saying that occasionally, this one has fascinated me from the beginning. because I actually think I can fire in that. Here's another one Owen picked up. Look at how they're utilizing this rock in this area. And there's another kiln that's set in behind here. I'm pretty sure the two photos came together, but they're utilizing this rock. So what does rock mean? Rock means hotter, hotter, hotter. Look at these vessels here. Do you see this one right here at the top? That's from over at Red Knobs area, where they like to do dark paste pottery, and they use the red clays as their body clays, and man, they rock it, right? They're warping, and that's bubbling just like lava would, and splitting and warping. My goal is always to warp something. But anyway, these guys love heat. Very large fires were built over the surface. Warped, vitrified bubble surfaces. It's all going down through there. They're seeing it. These guys are seeing it in these kilns. These people know how to cook pottery. Let's use the right clay, let's use a lot of wind, and let's use a lot of rock. All right, I think my picture of my kiln. Nope, not one more after this. Drainages, slopes, and near rims. This is another fascinating. Look at this kiln sitting right here. What a place, right? A lot of rock. Got some water coming down that drainage, probably got some airflow, a lot of materials to build a kiln. A lot of good stuff going on here. This is a good place for a kiln. Some air protection, probably the airflow is definitely gonna, there's gonna be a pattern to it, so. Anyway, what are we talking? Oh, drainages. Yeah, everybody's saying drainages, particular to drainages. I was just visiting with Winston Hurst the other day, and I said, out there on Alkali Ridge, 74% of those were in drainages. He says, no, it's way higher. It's way higher. Yeah, they're always associating with these drainages. You get a little bench that sits above a drainage. Oh, yeah, but we did get 1% that was actually on a flat surface. Is it a redwood kiln? I don't know. And now we're looking at, by the slope. So slope's another. We're in a drainage. Oh, look, there's some Morrison clay sitting right there. I do love my Morrison clay. Love that red clay right there. Look at this kiln. It's just like, okay, you guys learned already this is ash stain in the center. It's probably been used multiple times, right? Look at all this debris, this small rock, fire reddened debris around it. Owen threw his snake stick in there. We got an idea how big it is. Slope's a big deal. Why is slope a big deal? I don't know. I'm going to make it up, but I think because when you stand your kiln a little bit upright instead of like this, then you shoot wind into the whole kiln, right? You got wind penetration. Anywhere from, I think the lowest, I think on Alkali Ridge, they're averaging about 5%, but they do mention, Fuller says it went on 10%. I mean, it's the point then, it's like, I just put my pots in like a shelf, that's pretty, because right here gives you an idea. 3 foot gain over 24 foot is 6 degrees. 6 foot gain over 24 foot. This is about 24 foot, don't you think? If you get a 6 foot gain, that kiln's got some good airflow coming into it. So let's make contact with everybody. There's my kiln that I built about 1.5 years ago. So after I'm reading all of this stuff, I'm wanting two things. I'm wanting a slope, I'm wanting a drainage, and I'm wanting a lot of rock. And so I overdug this. I do have the slope naturally on the property, and 5 degree slope. There's 2 houses on the property, and the air comes right up between the houses, just like I'm in a drainage. And I probably stood out there for a month, feeling the wind from every direction for I don't know how long. And so I overdug it, and I put all these layers of rock in. Now, mind you, if Swink was here, he would say that's not an authentic kiln, it's way too much rock. I am trying to replicate where they are in the wild. I don't have a canyon rim. I don't have the colluvial soils. So I wanted that effect, and I'll tell you what, this kiln flat cooks. Now I've since divided it about right up here. I mostly fire in the one end. If you went out there today, this end's clear full of charcoal, the other end's where I've been firing.
How deep are you going? About 8 inches from the base rock layer up to the surface?
You mean before I fire or when I dug?
I'm thinking before you fire. I mean, you dug it deeper.
I dug it almost 2 foot.
And then you put your...
And then I came up, I'm not much over 8 inches below ground level. It depends on what you're firing, right? So when I divided it, one end is substantially deeper. So if I get into those bigger jars and stuff, then I've got that end to fire in, but my other end is a lot shallower. So yeah, I set higher than I used to. I just offset that oxidation by using charcoal. Yeah, go ahead.
And which way do you want the wind to blow, lengthwise or sideways?
Boy, it gets to be a lot, and every time you predict it, guess what happens? Man, you light off that secondary, and you're like, the wind was supposed to come from there today, and all of a sudden, everything's going that way. Every kiln is different, right? But you always want the ability to, so the predominant wind on this kiln is coming in right on this angle here, pretty much. And down here is my lower slope. So my air's coming up between those houses and coming kind of in through this corner, and it gets quite a bit higher on that corner, so it's lifting itself up on that end. The wind is. But I've had just as, my wind's changed on me enough times, so I fire. And you always try to predict, which one's going to be hotter, which one's going to be cooler, where should I set this, what mineral turns black at a lower temperature, what slip likes to vitrify when, which one is going to burn out the paint sooner. The one thing I really dislike, and this is probably the only thing about the kiln conference, is that we all show up. We have a lot of different clays, a lot of different slips, even if they're all from this area, including Arizona. But the problem is that we really should just be firing one thing in one kiln. Because every one of your clays out there is going to behave differently, and every one of your slips, and every one of your paints, and everything. So we throw them all in a kiln. We have no idea which one needs to be on what end. So, but it really just depends. In this modern age, when somebody can tell me on my phone exactly what the wind's going to do today, I definitely set my secondary according to what they say my air's going to do. And it depends on whether I'm doing mineral or organic. If I'm doing organic, I keep it really open and I let the wind get anywhere. If I'm doing mineral, man, I shut that thing down because I want everything in that kiln to suck out oxygen out of those pots. So my set's completely different. So that's kind of like the weird master class after all these firings. So, but on this kiln, primarily in this corner, these are just layers of charcoal. Again, the people that excavated, what did they see? Everything from a thin amount to, this has 15 inches on it, but it's really odd because they actually recorded the ash and the burned cobble in with it. They're obviously there. They're charcoal, right? Are we smothering? I think we are most of the time. All right, just a couple of, this is the big thing for me that I got out of a lot of this was, we've always talked about floors and furniture. Actually, I don't know if anybody talks about floors a whole lot. And boy, you go back and read Brisbane's excavations and you can see the floors versus Claudia's. She's got multiple floors. She's got an earthen floor underneath. She's got some thin sandstone that's double slabbed. Then she's got layers. It's like they were using that kiln for so many different things and they were never totally excavating. So they're building back and forth and being able to read, my point of view, the only way you can read these kilns is you've had to stuck your head in that fire about 50 times and played this game for about 10 years. You can't read these kilns. There's no way to educate yourself. You've got to have played the game. But this is the biggies here. So some kilns appear to have been left in exactly the same state as when the pots were removed. And this almost looks like kiln furniture, right? You can see where the big pieces, the bowls were set, where the smaller pieces were set. Got a lot of charcoal exposure, which we don't do enough of. We think these great big kilns for 100 pieces, but if we're properly leaving some exposure in our charcoal, we need a bigger kiln for less pieces. But under, yes, while with a layer of charcoal under the sandstone in familiar shapes and sizes that today's replicators use, this kiln on Woods Mesa gives a suggestion of where larger items like bowls, I already said that. This kiln is a snapshot in time, but what's fascinating about this 17-foot by 6.5-foot wide, man, set that secondary, not that deep. What's fascinating about it is a lot of the vessel sherds that came out of it, they were overfired, highly vitrified. One is extremely bloated, vitrified sintered, where the disgruntled potters so frustrated with this kiln that after leaving an offering, 2 mugs, they walked away from this kiln to never use it again. They didn't even put it to bed. Because this is out there where those 4 kilns are beside each other, and guess what? The kiln right beside it is not looking like this at all. I don't know. This is just what happens when you're spending too much time alone with pottery. Here's another kiln that I feel like is, boy, they just got done firing in it, right? All the kiln furniture is where it's supposed to be. And there's a lot of talk about it. Like, yeah, we definitely have stuff on top of this stratum 5 or stratum 4, which is usually your charcoal layer. Flat burned slabs on top of 3 inches of charcoal. I can see me setting, I'll put my 2 kiva jars here, and then I'll get a mug. I'm gonna leave this open so it pulls air. I'm gonna leave this open so it pulls air back out of my kiln, create a draft. Yeah, this is a usable, this kiln's not been put to bed. It was just used yesterday. But what happens here? It doesn't look like kiln furniture. You guys seen the sizes on this stuff? 24 inches? When I got to looking deep into these kilns, a lot of these kilns were covered with slabs that were enormous. We don't have kiln furniture this big. We don't do it, right? Does anybody in here that's a replicator ever use kiln furniture like this size? Yeah, no, we don't. I was even at a point using like these little roundnesses about this because I didn't want anything but charcoaling, affecting the firing of my pots. What's going on here? Charcoal would have been treasured for its multiple uses and never left to break into small pieces or to blow away. What a waste, right? After pottery excavation, furniture would have been removed and a fairly large slabs of sandstone as large as 1 to 2 foot would have been placed on top of that charcoal for protection. At this time, loose soil, which may have been used as the smother dirt, would have been pushed on top of those slabs. The kiln with only a small amount of dirt excavation would be ready for the next firing, and the charcoal would be clean of excessive soil. We made charcoal out there last night, and I hated to see them throw dirt on it, because dirt impregnation definitely can change the way that charcoal fires. But we got a lot of people here, we can fluff it good, we can let that dirt fall down inside. It's worse when it lays out there for a while. Some excavators report that the slabs on this lower stratum are oxidized on the bottom. Now think about that for a minute. This is a reduction kiln. How are those slabs on the bottom, if they're furniture, how are they possibly getting oxidized on the bottom? They're not. They were over here doing something else, and they're placed on this charcoal to protect this kiln. So, there's more evidence. I am tipping the iceberg on the notes on this stuff. So, once the initial fuel load had been consumed and the residue deported on the bottom of the kiln, it may never have been removed again throughout subsequent firings. Brilliant observation for Brisbane. And just look at these two kilns. These are photographs. I am not, again, have permission. Both these out on Woods Mesa. This one, notice this one. Does that look like our kiln furniture? When I first started looking at these photos, I did a firing where I got these big, awful, blocky rocks like this and left great big crevices between the sets. Then I burnt my primary on top of it and I let it fall down into all those cracks and crevices. Then I set my pots on this. It wasn't rock star, I haven't repeated it, but I couldn't tell you why this was like this. It's not right. And they haven't even excavated to the lower level yet. I'm not even sure what that is, but it shows up over and over. These are big pieces. This is not kiln furniture. And here's another perfect example of it. Again, the Hecock out on Alkali Ridge, she did kilns on, she didn't do them, another gal did them, but she reported them in Kiva. She did some kilns out on Alkali Ridge and the 2 on Burrow Point, but notice there are 31 slabs in here, and I've got some numbers up here. The largest slab, the 5 largest slabs are 26 by 34 centimeters, 30 centimeters a foot. The largest is 11 inches by 16 inches. This is not kiln furniture. This kiln was put to bed. They're saving that charcoal for next time. Is this relevant? I don't know. It made me get excited. I just don't want to overlook anything. And here's 2 more kilns. Is this kiln furniture? I mean, look at this. This is 50 centimeters. These are monster slabs on this thing. Yeah, I put New Brisbane says, where the walls, this is my, so it's Brisbane's kiln, this is my opinion. No slab lining, where the walls pulled to, so I actually think they pulled the walls in to cover the charcoal. A destructive but yet quick way to put that kiln to bed. So just because we're not seeing slabbed walls doesn't mean they weren't there. And I think archaeologically, Bruce could probably tell me, he can probably tell when he does an excavation whether there had been a slab there during the firing. But I'm not sure that's not. And then here's just another one. 42, Brisbane says, this is Brisbane's words, tightly packed slabs. Stones are extra large, up to 16 inches by 22. This is not kiln furniture. But is it a floor? Because there's charcoal under it. So these are just some more numbers for you guys to look at. 2-foot slabs set together closely, sandstones tightly fit and lower fill, 38 pieces, continuous layer across the floor. I don't know how this got overlooked from Swink in Brisbane, and they'll probably watch this video and I'll be getting phone calls, but I don't know how they can just say that this is kiln furniture, because there's something else going on here. And maybe it is just that they want to protect that charcoal, and maybe that's not a light bulb moment, but it was for me, because the more I utilize charcoal, the easier firings are. And I mean, it uses less wood, but I mean, it's just an easier firing. Charcoal is the rock star of the prehistoric pottery world. So this quote you got to look at right here, though. Second to the last. The lens of blocky, angular, and tabular sandstone slab was placed on top of stratum floor, the charcoal layer, and as a result of soil pressure, what? As a result of soil pressure? Did they put the smothered dirt back in on this? These stones near the center of the feature settled into the charcoal. Anyway, it's just weird stuff that gets me excited. You guys think you have it bad. Bill usually has to listen to this. So here I am. Oh, I'm actually done at this point. This is fascinating. Let's talk questions. There I am in a better day, Anyway, let's talk questions. Let's talk kilns. Go for it.
Okay. The amount of labor involved in digging a trench kiln.
Yeah.
And the amount of maintenance. I noticed most of the ones that were cataloged were used multiple times, but there still seems to be a lot of single-use trench kilns in there.
Yeah.
Is there a good explanation?
Owen would say if you ever had a bad firing, you never use that kiln again. I don't know, maybe. Maybe they just didn't stay there long enough. I don't know. Anybody else has feedback? Again, I don't necessarily know all the answers, but go back to your drainages though. You're in a drainage, you're talking about a lot of work to dig these kilns. The amount of time I put in that one, no. Yeah, I was out there with a pickaxe and a water hose. But in a drainage, the cut's already there. I just have to roll the rock around and get the general shape. You know, it's kind of back to what Donna said about paint and pottery. We'll take all the time in the world if we get in a studio. I'll take all the time in the world if I can go in the house and get an iced tea. But prehistorically, just get that shape along that drainage. The soils are soft. We've got a lot of rock to work with. So we can't assume that those kilns were hard or deep or whatever to dig. That would be number one. But yes, there. I don't know what. Not enough work's been done. How many kilns are only used once? I have no idea. Bruce, if Bruce has something to add too, because I always like if anybody wants to add something to it. Yes.
Well, just kind of along the, when you said that, you know, if they've had a bad firing, they don't go back and, you know, they don't reuse it. And that kind of speaks to something that a native basket maker told me. She was told she was taught not to make baskets when you're angry.
Oh, interesting.
Because that anger would go into the basket. I think that's a way of saying,
yeah,
you know, you're frustrated,
energy.
You're going to get, you're going to make mistakes, essentially. And so it may be that they try to kiln here, and for some reason it didn't work out. Is it because the slope wasn't right? Is it because the prevailing winds? All these other things that, you know,
clay,
that may have been a
kilns
way
with,
to kind of convey that it's just, you know, for whatever reason, it's, you know.
Generationally, could have been lefting a marker to say that, yeah, where we place this kiln.
Or just not go back. And
I
just
don't know
say,
if we'll
you know,
ever
if you have a really, really bad firing,
jump
it's
in.
a bad sign, don't reuse it.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a good point though, right? Because the energy, if you fire pottery, you better have your head screwed on. You better be in a good mood. It'll eat you alive. Yeah.
So how are you firing different today than you did 5 years ago?
Oh my gosh. Depends. I'm going to take that general thing. Depends on the time of the year, depends on the clay, depends on the slip, depends upon the paint. I mean, it depends on the size of my vessels. There's so much that changes with every firing. As far as Eastern Colorado kiln, so mind you, when I fired on the plains, we hauled juniper. It was an authentic kiln. We hauled juniper from at least to Canyon City because I wouldn't fire with anything but juniper. I didn't know how much what my kiln was set on was affecting my temperatures. Now, mind you, I produced a lot of amazing pottery, but I got down here and I'm like, wow, I can't hardly control my temperature. So it's making me rethink my settings. I mean, I would even pull out the 3-foot greenhouse fan at times and pour it to it, just because like I didn't get the wind I needed today. This was old days. I wouldn't do that now. I don't need to. So definitely your soil makes a difference. And that's why I so bad would have loved to have one of those drainages. I would love to go fire in a wild kiln or be able to build a kiln alongside it and kind of like they got to do a couple times because I think airflow is huge, huge, huge. Rock is huge. Yeah, it was Druck, Isabella Druck, that says, you know, a time temp variable. These guys down here are popping up in temperature and coming right back down versus you don't have to get as hot if you can leave it in the kiln for 4 days, you know, like a Japanese kiln or something. Again, I'm not a ceramicist either, but if I can hold heat, you know, I'm also doing some work, so even after that kiln is smothered, although when you drop in temperature, most of the work is done, but if I can keep those at a certain temperature for a while, I'm adding to the ring factor. I'm not probably going to vitrify at that point, but so I just don't think, you guys just don't want to underlook your rock. You know, hold your heat in there, fire full loads, minimum square meter of a kiln. If you get much smaller than that, I mean, it's just hard to reach temperatures, but I don't know. That's such a slow process. Yeah. There are a couple of new things, but they're not, a few people in this room know about them, but they're so new that hopefully you'll know by this time next year. There's a couple of really deep dives going on into two things particular, but I didn't think I'd get my data out, and I did, so I can conclusively say a couple. No, I can't even conclusively. I've never been able to say conclusively. I feel a lot better about, and I would have liked to talked about that here, but no more doing that crap because I'm just making you wonder what I'm talking about. So, but it's good stuff, and all I want to do is figure it out. I just want to keep being out there and figure it out. Yeah. So, anything else? Clays? Anything? Anybody else? Can I get out of here? No. Oh yes, definitely. Would you like to talk on the microphone?
I'm just wondering if there
Yeah.
are any prehistoric adobe kilns.
Prehistoric adobe kilns. Do you guys know? I will tell you that the Claudia Helm is what I refer to it as kiln on Utah 95 highway as you dip down across Comb Ridge out into Cedar Mesa, one of the really earliest kilns ever excavated. Oddly enough, the slabs were set in adobe. But that's, again, we only have 37 kilns to look at, so if we could only look at the other 100,000, we might have a pattern. That's the only, no, there's one more, Brisbane has one up there where they've utilized the bedrock and they've chipped kind of the shape of the kiln into the bedrock, and then they actually mudded in the flaws in the bedrock. So sometimes, I can't figure out why they possibly would do that. I don't even know why they would mud the walls, but not usually. Are you building one like that?
No.
Oh darn, why don't you? And then you tell us next year. I am for it. Yeah, this yeah, that's exactly how I got to where I am right now. Just wondering. Yeah, no, exactly. What about one more? One more? Any more? No? Rod?
Well, thanks, Cheryl.
It's all lies. No.